Welcome to the Predictable Revenue Podcast, where sales leaders teach you what's working for them and how you can build it yourself.
This episode of the Predictable Revenue Podcast is brought to you by our sales coaching and consulting services. Are you looking to create repeatable, scalable, and predictable revenue? We've helped thousands of companies grow their business with tailored expert advice backed by testing to ensure they establish the best practices that'll work for them. Head over to bit.ly/predictable revenue coaching to learn more.
Welcome back to the Predictable Revenue Podcast. I'm your host, Collin Stewart, and today I'm joined by Sam Kuehnle. He's another member of the dark side, or demand gen, might be a VP of demand gen over at Refine Labs. This is continuing the theme that we've kind of carried through the last few episodes of talking to people on the demand gen, on the marketing side, because I believe that we're doing a very similar job, and these two roles, these two departments are coming together. And I think 2023 is going to be a big step forward for sales development and marketing demand gen to buddy up together. And so I wanted to carry this through the end of the year, because I think there's a ton that we can learn in terms of how we can work together and how we can get more out of our friends in marketing. On the episode today, we talked about re-envisioning the sales development role. And this is coming from from a marketing demand gen perspective, but Sam also was an account development rep years and years and years ago. And as he admits, it was one of his hardest roles ever. And today what we're going to talk about, or what we talked about, was kind of the problem with a volume approach to sales development, the sort of impact it's having, how we got there. And I may have stood on my soapbox and talked about sales development styles and the math and this and this and that. So if you can, maybe skip over that. I've got about a good minute and a half in there where I just couldn't control myself. But we talk about the problem, the impact it's having on our campaigns, on our customers, and we've got a couple of interesting solves in there. So stay tuned. That episode's coming right up. Sam, welcome to the show.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. This will be a fun one.
Yeah, I'm always happy to talk about sales development. And I think the thing that I was most excited about was you all have a different take on revenue R&D. And we've got Sydney coming on the show to talk about that in a couple of weeks. I just did the pre-interview yesterday. And so I'm pretty excited about that one. But what spurred the conversation initially is Sam has some interesting thoughts on, you come from a demand gen background, and you've got some interesting thoughts on re-envisioning the sales development role. And so I'd love to start there. Talk to me about the way that you see the problem as it stands with sales development right now.
Yeah, I do want to preface this with, I know I'm in marketing and it's really easy to point fingers at like people in other roles. Sales isn't doing this, partner isn't doing this. I started as a BDR, we actually called it ADR, account development representative. It was the hardest job I've ever had. I have utmost respect and I know how challenging it can be. But a lot of these thoughts have stemmed from my learnings there. And then also what we've been applying from a demand gen standpoint and thinking about, okay, well, how does the rest of the B2B organization need to evolve with this? But yeah, the SDR role, man, it's a fun one. The gist of it is I'm really starting to see that it's doing more damage than good with the current practices that are being set. So how did we get to this point? When you look at most organizations, SDRs are given goals around volume, not quality. Sales leaders stems from them. Executives, it's all the volume game. So the old predictable revenue model, you layer that on top of, VC growth expectations and all this knowledge that they've been doing it for 20, 30, 50 years, however long they've been in it. But you have this volume plus pressure from a strategy that has worked years and years ago, but hasn't phased into today's age as well. So when we look back 10 years ago, how was information gathered by prospects? So I want to make a purchase in B2B. What do I have to do? We'll call it the analog buying era. So you have fewer sources of information. You need to get that information from the vendor directly and by speaking with sales. Remember when you used to actually call a phone number on a website and want to talk to someone? So in that scenario, you have the vendors who have all of the power here. They hold the information. It can only be given by them. So any access to it, you need to fill out a form. You need to acquire it through them by events or formal means, something like that forces you to reach out to the company. Compare that to today, when we'll call it the digital era of, think like Netflix, on-demand culture, everything else. Information is everywhere. You can't go anywhere without a Google search, Reddit, go anywhere. You're going to find the information that you want. So if the information isn't on the website, which it isn't for most organizations, you're going to a third-party website. Think G2, Capterra to learn more about the product, pricing, what others have said about it. You're talking to peers who have used the vendor, whether currently or in the past. You're getting recommendations from experts. So you're listening to podcasts, you're watching videos on YouTube, you're following that thought leader. But the crux behind that is buyers are doing their own research now, and they want to remain anonymous until they're ready to start that conversation. So it's this weird flip that's going on where a lot of the old B2B strategy or the current B2B strategy is pretending like things haven't changed yet, although they just don't want to recognize that the psychology of buying has evolved. And so there's this awkward lull in between where we're half lying to ourselves about volume when we're seeing the results get worse and worse over time.
I'd love if we could just park there for a minute, because
Yes.
I totally agree with everything you said. The caveat there is like predictable revenue is obviously, it's the book itself is over 10 years old. It was written about Aaron's experience in Salesforce in 2004. So like it's pretty, that process is dated. I would argue sales development and maybe our methodology has come, I mean, I think everybody's methodology, when I say everybody, I'm referring to like guests of the podcast, people I know in sales development that are running big teams. I can't speak for everybody in the industry categorically, because I at the same time, I agree with you that if you are stuck with a volume only approach as your only weapon, the only tool in your toolkit, you're absolutely in the situation. I think there are a number of teams that have adopted and adjusted to the different styles, whether it's a volume approach or a quality approach. And I think there are different kind of gradations of volume versus quality in between that are exceptionally helpful. And we have seen that evolution. So like, I gotta stand up for the book, man. I mean, the book itself is, it's over 10 years old, about experience 15 years old. We're working on a new methodology in another book for next year. So like, I recognize that that's old. I also recognize that people are still reading that book and saying, oh, this is how it should work today, which is, I hope the message you get out of this, that yes, that is true. And there are different gradations of sales development.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. There's a big gray space in the middle. This isn't you're in one camp or the other. You have a lot of organizations, like you say, that have recognized this and are starting to adapt. There's just that heavy majority where they sit. Are they closer to one side or the other? And like you say, it's, have we adapted enough in the 18 years since then?
Totally. And so I'm curious, like I see how we got here. Why do you think sales leaders get stuck on the volume versus quality?
It's predictable, allegedly. I love a good funnel. I'm pretty sure a lot of organizations like a good funnel because it gives them a sense of comfort. What can we expect? We have one SDR, they can make 100 dials a day. We know if they do that, we're going to get one opportunity out of it. Well, what if we have 10 SDRs? Does that mean we get 10 opportunities? What if we have 1,000 SDRs? Do we get 1,000 opportunities? So there's that aspect of it where is it just more resources, but what often doesn't come into play here is the context or the point of diminishing returns. So what happens when you do get that 1,000th SDR? Do you even have that many accounts that you can realistically reach out to? Or are they just going to be chasing each other where, day one, John's going to call these 100 accounts. Day two, Jane's going to call 100 accounts, 50 which overlap with John's accounts. And now you have started this phase where it's like this prospect just got hit twice with someone they don't really want to talk to yet. And there's another part of the experience to it. So I think a lot of it just comes from the business modeling of every year we need to grow year over year. How are we going to do it? And most people go straight to the top. Let's just add more. If we add more, we can get more at the bottom. Not enough are focusing on the in between. So you don't always need to add more at the top. What if you just improve conversion rates along the way? What if you get more efficient? And that's where the quality part of this conversation comes into play. That still have, the same amount of SDRs, but what if instead of doing 100 dials a day, we do 50 and we have them just spend a little bit more time doing the research or whatever else that is? You can double your team if you want, same number of output, but they're more impactful outreaches. And so that's where I think there's an opportunity for us to start to do a little bit better.
I totally agree. And I think on the why, I think I empathize with a sales leader's perspective that when you're trying to do something new, you're taking a risk. You're going out on the line. And especially when you're moving away from established best practice of volume. because regardless of email or phone, it's been a sales leader's job has been a volume game for a very long time. We have reached that point where you have to take into consideration the sort of volume versus quality teeter-totter. I don't know, for lack of a better word, it's got to be a balance of the right amount of both. If you are in that sales leader's position, and like, let's imagine a new sales leader and they are 40, right? Or maybe 30 to 40. Chances are if they're 40, they grew up with the volume approach, right? That's where their experience as an individual contributor came from. So that's what they're used to. And to take a risk with your job on the line for moving to this newfound approach, even though it makes sense when you talk it through, you're still putting your job on the line, and you're putting your job in the hands of the sales leader underneath you and the sales team underneath them. And that's a big risk. And it's a big risk that I remember moving to the CEO role, like from founder and out of a sales role. It takes a long time. Like, it took me years to get to drop that feeling of like, I should be calling. I'm carrying a bag. Why haven't we, like, it's a habit. I don't know. It's like something that just follows you around. And so I can empathize with them. And at the same time, I understand that like, it's hard to measure quality. Like, if you say, okay, I'm going to do 60 quality or 20 quality outreaches a day, instead of doing my 65, 75 dials a day, how do you properly measure, report, and show progress on quality, especially on something so subjective? And I think that's where I think a lot of this that's where we get stuck in the like, okay, well, if we can't do that, then just volume. Because also from maybe, and I need to step down off my soapbox, but I think the last thing I'll say is like the quality approach takes a little bit longer, right? Like, the volume, you see instant results. And I think humans are generally poor at making medium to long-term investments.
Yeah, I'm with you. I always equate it to, starting your snowball. It's going to be small for a while, but once it picks up that momentum, that's when it turns into something big. Can you wait 3-4 quarters? That's where it comes down to the business. One of the ways that I found a good way to understand, like, is it working? And also, it's a big leap of faith. Why? Like, we've got a big sales organization. How do we shift everyone? It's like, don't shift everyone. Start with a small batch. Do an experiment, more or less, where take a quarter, take 2 quarters. Say you have an SDR team of 25 people, 50 people, whatever, take 20% of them, have them take this approach, and then you can track them, because they should be using their own, like, you can track by meetings booked, opportunities sourced by, SDR1, SDR2, compare that, and you can see over time, over those couple quarters, are they generating more meetings or less meetings than their counterparts? So, I mean, there's always going to be some SDRs are better than others, but get enough people in the mix, you should be able to tell where that's where it gets into that conversion rate play, where the more quality leads to less output needed at the top, but they're converting at the higher level. So although they're making fewer dials, fewer outputs, it's going to end up being more of the desired outcome, which is those meetings booked or the opportunity created for the sales rep to work. So take a phased approach. That's definitely what I would recommend, and see how it works. And that also gives you time to work out the kinks, anything else, if you do want to scale it out to the rest of the organization.
And I love that. I think that's a great idea. I think the one maybe context I would add, because I've had conversations with sales leaders about this, and like, it just doesn't make sense for my business. And that's going to be true in many cases. Like, there are going to be businesses that are just the sales math works out. Like, if you're trying to sell a $5,000 to $10,000 product, this just doesn't make sense, this approach. I remember talking to Freshworks, they're Canadian like accounting software. And I was talking to their sales leadership, and they're like, yeah, we like hate to be controversial, but predictable revenue doesn't work for us. And I was like, dude, you're selling $1,000 a year products. Like, of course, a full stack motion is going to work. And I think the idea of like thinking about the different grades and aligning your target market to like the style that's going to give you the best result is kind of the thing that is the context or the nuance that I think a lot of people miss. It's not a binary equation. It's not, we have to move everybody all at once. It's let's move a couple people and let's find the right market that we can test this method out on.
Yeah, you're spot on with the, the contract value being a big determinant. And that's why you see so many of the $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 products, they're going product led. What skill is better than a free trial or something like that? Let them get in, and then you follow up with those people once they're already in for you. So yeah, this definitely applies much more to mid-market enterprise. I mean, think of the organizations that have strategic sales reps. There's a reason for that.
Let's talk about, I think we're kind of aligned on on the solution moving forward. I'm curious what you've been seeing in conversion rates with the sales development teams that you've been working with, whether internal at Refined Labs or externally.
Yeah, they're getting better. The quality, so it's 100 dials, one opportunity, 50 dials or 20 dials, whatever the behavior that you're looking for. So are dials and emails even the right output, or is it engagement with ICP on LinkedIn? You're going, connecting, commenting on their posts, developing those relationships, everything else. But to the conversion rates, it is looking at and understanding not all conversion rates are equal. A lot of companies will say this is our total amount of leads, our total amount of opportunities created, and they're taking an average of a number of other averages, because if you split all those funnels out, you have SDR, you have AE initiated, you have partner, you have inbound marketing from the website, you have outbound marketing from events and other things, and they're blending all these together. But if you go and compare your partner, your inbound website, your SDR, I can guarantee you that the conversion rates from lead to opportunity or whatever that is that you're looking for are wildly different. So that's the first thing that you need to recognize is, there are going to be some nuances once you get into that. But the conversion rates themselves, so I haven't worked super closely to where we have clients that are we're on board with this, and then I'm coaching them. Again, they have their own SDR team, they have their sales leaders who they're like, that is interesting, we'll try it out. But those that are doing it are continuing to see good results, similar to what they're seeing with the demand gen program. Because what we say is, before, think of lead gen campaigns, ebooks, and demand gen marketing. You used to get thousands of leads that would come to your sales team. These are all leads, they're good to talk to, but that of 1,999 just wanted the ebook, they aren't ready to talk to you in sales. Mm-hmm. So when you think about all of the dials that you're making or anything else, are they turning into what we want them to be at the end of the day? So when you go about the quality side of it, it's you need to look at it from that desired output of the meetings booked at the end of the day. So I would rather have someone who 10 dials, 10 emails, whatever it is, but I know that they're going to generate whatever it is in terms of the results that we want. That's going to be the meaningful conversation for sales. So when we get into that, that's where it starts to pan out, and you see you just need to take the time to let it work out at the end of the day. I know it's not the ideal answer, because every business, every company is going to be different, and it comes down to also just how good are your reps at it. But the instances that I've seen it work is they just recognize that those who do come through, you've scraped off the stuff that never converted anyway, and you still have that base level of the people who are genuinely interested. And now you're just creating more, because instead of getting on 100 dials and making 90 people mad, you're only talking to 10 people, and you're leading with this consultative approach of, saw that you're in this industry, what's going on? I work with a number of other companies like you. What are you struggling with? How can I help? And just lead with advice and help and value, instead of, here's what our company is, here's what we do, do you want to buy our product? And then it's well, no, you just called me out of the blue, I don't really want to talk about this. But if you lead with help, it's just the dynamic, as simple as that. That's what goes a long way. And then they might not be ready now, but they're like, hey, we're actually going into budget season right now, I should know in 2 months, give me a call back then. That's going to be a much better call later on than having Sally come around on her 100 dials a day in a couple months that has no context of what's going on or what they're going through.
Totally. I remember working with, I'm drawing a blank on their name. It's not Aquia. It was the big subscription. It is the big subscription revenue company. They do it's like Chargeify, but for huge companies. And I'm drawing a blank on the name. We interviewed them for Impossible to Inevitable, and they talked about their T-shaped funnel, where their deals sit in cold, or their account statuses sit in cold for 3 years. And then suddenly, and their SDRs keep working them because they're trying to build context and understand the pain. And so that they're the first company in the door before a company like, say, GM is thinking about adopting a recurring revenue model. And then suddenly, 3 years later, they're flat, 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 and then they drop right down because that SDR has had a 2-year relationship where they've been providing value, providing value, providing value. And then as soon as they're ready to do it, they've already decided that, oh, well, we've got this SDR or this account development rep or this AE or this team that's been advising us for 2 years. We're just going to go with them. And they might look at 2 other people, but
yeah, it's being in that first set to be evaluated is such an unfair bias towards like your likelihood of winning that deal, as if they know who you are, they know that you're good at what you do, that you've solved it for companies like them, and they know like, John's invested in us, Jane's invested in us, we already know her. Like, you're going to win that way more often than just like you said, play the broad game. So I love that example.
totally. And to the opposite effect, like, I think because that is like 3 years without like any progress in pipeline, like it would be very hard for them to quantify with a traditional sort of like med pick, et cetera, et cetera. They've got a pretty advanced account scoring system, because it's obviously like a 3-year sale, 3 to 5 year sale in some cases. And so that's really hard to measure progress. And they've got, a slightly different methodology. I think to answer the question we were talking about earlier, conversion rates over the last few years across sales development, if you think about, I mean, they've been trending down for the last 10 years. I mean, when I started predictable revenue 10 years ago, or the company that turned into predictable revenue 10 years ago, I could send 100 emails and get a 10 to 15% reply rate.
Mm-hmm.
Like not including the follow-ups, like 10 to 15 on that first batch. And it wasn't even a great email. It was an okay email. But it wasn't exceptionally great. And that's certainly those overall conversion rates. I think that there's 2 things in my mind that are impacting that they're driving down the overall conversion rates. I think there are technical challenges or technical, whatever you want to call it, with email and deliverability. Gmail gets better, Gmail gets worse at filtering in and out certain things. And like that seems to be up and down, but is generally trended, down, down, down. And if you don't have your SPF, DKIM, and DMARC records, and I think there's a new one, you're not going to get your emails delivered at all. I have a graph I used to look at, and it was like our overall email deliverability rates. And you could see when they implemented SPF, things just went, and then DKIM came in. You would think I would start like reading things about this. And finally, when DMARC came out, I was like ahead of the game, and we had our DMARC records and the policy published, et cetera, et cetera. But so there's the technical reasons why email deliverability has been getting harder, but that doesn't account for all of sales development. When you think about the total volume of sales development email over the last 10 years, it's been increasing steadily every year. And I don't want to say what kind of curve it is, because I don't think I understand what logarithmic means versus exponential versus linear. I mean, I think I know what linear means, but I'm not going to get into math here. This is a sales and marketing podcast. But I think there are more and more sales development reps every single year. And so the channel just becomes more crowded, and the inbox has become more crowded. And, Google has gotten better at separating out the email. And so I think when you look at this, the volume play used to work great, doesn't work as well anymore. I think it does work in certain industries, and there's maybe certain geos or certain countries where it's like it goes gangbusters, because they're on a different technology adoption curve when it comes to sales development. But certainly in the US and Canadian markets, sales development has been here for a while. People have seen SDR A game from top companies, and they come to expect that if you want to book a meeting from them. And so I think expectations have been raised, as well as the volume, as well as the technical abilities, the technical, I'd say, challenges we face. I'm curious on we've talked a lot about the problem, and we've kind of alluded to a little bit the models of how we solve it. I'm curious, what's your perspective? We started talking about, what is the re-envisioning the SDR role? So talk to me about how you see it. Do we even call them sales development reps anymore? Do you want to call them like marketing people?
Well, I mean, look at the title of the name. So SDR, sales development representative. The issue has been there's been an overemphasis on sales and no emphasis on development. When you think about, like, there's a reason that there's sales reps, account executives, and sales development, because execs, you want spending on the deals, the things that are ready. Development needs to be developed. So I think that that's a part of it. You don't have to change the title. You just have to realign on what's the purpose and intention of this role, because it's turned into every outreach needs to get the ideal result from the prospect, creating an opportunity, booking a meeting, but fewer and fewer or less and less value is being given to the prospect to make them want to take that. So I'm thinking about, like, I remember I was driving to, it's like the dentist or something the other day, and I get this call coming through on my phone. It's from my area code. I'm like, granted, I moved now, so I know that no one calls from my old area code, but I'm like, hey, maybe it's an old friend calling to reach out or something. Answer the phone. It's a software company who I know is based out of San Francisco. That's weird. Why are they calling from an Ohio area code? But to the point of, one, I don't want to be having business calls on my personal cell phone. When COVID came about, back in the office, it was normal. You have your work phone, it sits on your desk, it's part of the game. You're going to be getting people prospecting. Like, that's cool, that's normal, it's accepted. COVID comes around, you're working from home, and now I don't have an office line. All I've got is my cell phone. And the only people who have that number I want saved in my phone as a contact, their friends, their family. They're the few businesses that actually do want to talk to. So I got mad. Think about it. They called me from what seemed like my old area code. You're starting the relationship off with distrust. Do you really think that that is going to land well if you want to do business with these people moving forward? And that's kind of your practices. So there's a psychology behind it of, is this what we should really be doing to go to market? Because that's not the way that humans operate and have operated for so long. And not only are you pretending to be from somewhere you're not, but you're also then talking about your company, your role. I'd love to book a meeting with you. Here's what we do. What am I getting out of this? Have you helped me in any way? Do you understand the problems I'm facing? Are you telling me that there's an easier way to do my job, get better results? Or are you just operator connecting me over to someone else who's then going to pitch me? And again, what am I getting out of this? So I think that to go back to the point of, there's no development within any of that. That's just going for that end result right off the bat, which I know the relationship metaphor is played out, but like, you don't ask someone to marry you on the first date. Pretty similar over here. So yeah, I mean, I could go on for days about just like how outreach is so company oriented and not prospect oriented anymore. But yeah, I'll stop on that for a second before we get into just like, what do we do about it?
Yeah, it's fair. I think I'm a different breed of human. I get so many, I wish I got more sales development rep calls, because my phone is lighting up all day and it's all automated junk. And I think my phone number is out there a little bit more than the average salesperson, because I've probably bought hundreds or thousands of domains, in the past. I mean, maybe not thousands, but I've certainly bought a lot of domains. And back in the day, you had to put your phone number out there and your email address out there. So I get a ton of these automated. They scraped it from somewhere. And I think that's the future of what buyers are going to have to deal with. And it's not necessarily just sales development reps. Like, to me, it's like an oasis in the desert. I'm like, oh, a cup of glass water, like a really nicely crafted sales development voicemail. I'm like, yeah, good for you. I mean, I also work in the field, so maybe I'm different, but I've noticed that I've changed. I used to hate it. It used to really bug me. And now there's so much garbage that I almost appreciate that there's a human on the other line. And I'll first look at the voicemail, because I get the voice to text because I'm lazy, and I don't think I've dialed my voicemail in like years. I can guarantee it's been years, unless there was like an issue with my voicemail. So I read it, I might push play. And if it's a decent non-automated voicemail, I'll text the person back. I may not call them, but sometimes we'll call them, but rarely.
I mean, even,
if it's
I
good.
can't remember last time I got a voicemail from someone though. You get the dial, hang up, and now they're doing dial twice, dial 3 times, because they're like, oh, well, maybe it's like, you have your phone's do not disturb button. Yeah, exactly. So I still don't get a voicemail, or common enough. So yeah, even to that point, I get it that you'd respect and want a good voicemail, but it's like, even those are going down because they're just like, on to the next auto dialer on my computer, and they're off to the races.
I wonder if I'm going to start yearning for like SDRs, be like, hey, listen, just text me, which 5 years ago I would have said is like, absolutely not, don't do that. But like, I think I've moved all my like personal conversations to like WhatsApp and Signal. And so like text message is sort of this like, maybe it's that zone for it. But I think I'm maybe on the leading edge of like having my personal data exposed to like the internet. And so I've seen a lot of this. Like my phone's permanently on do not disturb, but only it's like my wife and maybe 4 others can actually get through, plus like the school.
Yeah, fair enough. So
yeah, it's rare.
Yeah. Well, so what do we do about it? It's where I see it happening already in marketing is what makes me believe that this can work really well with SDRs. When I say we're seeing it in marketing, it's stop being your business or whatever for a second. Just think about the last time that you went and were shopping for something or making a business purchase. What did you buy? So you likely already had an existing relationship with that business from some means or another. They've likely already demonstrated their expertise, provided value to you in some way, and then you weren't ready, for the last 6 months, but 2023 is coming right around the corner. We've got this new set of expectations, goals we need to hit. I know who they are. I'm going straight to their website. I'm not spurred by a generic out of the blue SDR outreach campaign, some random email nurture. They've been on my radar, like you said, for a while before in that T-shaped funnel. Like you already know who you're going to and when. So how does this then translate into SDRs, and what can we learn from it? So to me, the core comes back to the relationship side of it. They know who you are. I work with so many organizations that have a phenomenal product. Their customer success team is amazing. Their product is unbelievable. But 98% of their market have no idea who they are. So they're not even in that conversation that you and I spoke about earlier. If you're not on that first list, you're probably not even going to be in the running for any of that. So how do you do that? And that's where it comes back to forming the relationship. So how do you educate the market that you exist? Or if you're an SDR, what can you do in your role about it? So I think that there's a lot that can be learned from, I don't want to call it like thought leadership, but the people who are sharing helpful content, whether it's on LinkedIn, on Reddit, on Quora, on Twitter. You're leading with value and helping your larger space without expecting anything really in return. I mean, yes, there's probably personal gains in it from personal brand, thinking about your career, but your desired result is not, I need to get 10 opportunities created off of this one post. Like that's not where you're coming from. So your focus then becomes on, if I'm going to say something out here, I can't just throw out generic advice, something bad, people call me out for it. So you need to really lean into that quality side and show your expertise. You're going to do value and share that with them. So you can think about, if you're an SDR, what do you know that other people don't in the market? And this is the biggest unlock I think most people don't realize, is that things that seem common to you probably aren't to 98, 99% of the people that you can help. So share that advice. That's going to go a long way. And so as an SDR, go on LinkedIn, start connecting with people who are your ideal prospects, but don't connect right away. Take that list of 100 people and then just go look up their profiles. See, are they posting anything? And then go comment on it, go like it, go start a dialogue with them. This is going to start putting a face to the name. And people are so burned out by all of the LinkedIn DMs with just these immediate pitches and everything else. So they're going to see this sense of refreshment that like, okay, they might know that you have an ulterior motive. Like, yes, again, you're in business at the end of the day, but you're adding to their conversation. You're showing that you have a point of view, that you understand the space. So do a little bit back and forth with them and then send that message later on. Hey, I've really enjoyed our conversation. Would love to learn more about like what you're doing at this company. I've been working with countless others, would love to share any ideas that might be helpful. Do you think they're going to be more likely to reply to that than here's what our company does, hop on a call with me? Like that's where it is. And I think that's the biggest unlock, that it comes back to the basics that we've just strayed from.
100%. I mean, I'm thinking about my LinkedIn inbox, and like LinkedIn just introduced it's like the priority and the other inbox. And like, I have so many in the other that are all automated responses. And there's so many, I have so many in my inbox in general that like borderline like stopping to use it. I won't put the app on my phone anymore because it's not good. I don't want to get those notifications. And so I've had to do other things because it is so flooded with automation. And it comes back to your point of quality. I wonder if in some ways that all this automation has actually lowered the bar for quality, because when you're so used to all these automated messages, even like a somewhat personalized human touch that says, hey, I'm not a robot. Like,
I have a perfect story of that. I gave this guy a shout out a couple months ago on LinkedIn, but it was that exact thing where I got an email from an individual, an SDR. They looked me up on LinkedIn. They demonstrated that they actually read my biography because they tailored their email message. It wasn't a lot, it was 2 sentences, but how hard is it to do that? He understood what my company does. We're in marketing. We help organizations grow. Modified his messaging to tie into what he knew about me from my bio, what he knew about my company, and did it in a playful way. It's like, how would you have a conversation with a stranger at a bar or at a coffee shop? It's probably not, all rigid and uptight, but how people actually want to talk. Yeah, exactly. And so I didn't enter the sales cycle for them on that specific touch point, so to say, but I saved his information. I replied back. I was like, hey, great email, really appreciate you took the time. Similar to what you do. It's like, it's kind of nice when you see that someone's doing their job well. BDR role is hard, as I said. I know what it's like to go through that grind. Like, hey man, I know you're going through it. Keep on, you're doing a great job. Things will come around. But fast forward, 3 quarters later, I had a need for something like that. And you remember, or what I did? I went to my email inbox and I typed in that company name. I found him. I went to him. I didn't go to their website to fill out the form there because I wanted him to get the credit. He did the time to do the research and everything. So I went back through him to start the process. But yeah, it was easy. And by the time I reached back out to him, guess who was promoted into a full-time account executive? So yeah, it was, again, nothing on there is earth-shaking or different. It's just getting back to the fundamentals of just how do humans like to buy and work with one another.
Totally. So let's sidebar on this conversation. This SDR reached out to you. 9 months later, you thought about them. Let's say you were lazy and you're like, oh, I'm going to remember this company name. Or I think, being in the space, you and I, we're a little bit more conscious of, we want to give an SDR credit. We want to give the salesperson, want to make sure they get that commission. If I've talked to somebody at a retail store, I want to make sure I'm like, it was Sarah over there in the vest. Like, they helped me. I want them to get credit, or I'll go out of my way because I've been in their shoes. I don't think everybody's like that. And I think I've noticed that even at PR, like, we'll outbound to companies and they'll inbound to us. And it's like, and it's a sizable chunk of accounts that will do that. My question here is, if you're the director of marketing or CMO at that company, and let's pretend that I'm the buyer, that 9 months later, I'm not as conscious of this SDR and I inbound to that company, who gets credit?
God, you're getting attribution with me. I hate attribution. What will most companies do, or what would I do? So most companies,
what would you do?
Yeah. What would I do? Okay. What would I do? I don't care if it's the lead source. The initial way that lead entered the funnel was from marketing, sales, pulled a name out of a lottery hat. We are all working towards a shared revenue goal. And I think that's why so many sales and marketing teams don't pass information, because I remember I worked in an organization where every week I went through and I was looking at a report of how many of the opportunity source was manually changed by a sales rep that flipped it from marketing to AE. They were comped on it. So, that was all because of attribution. And so we did not have a good relationship with the sales team. I wasn't getting insights around what they were selling, what messaging they were using. I was pushing stuff that I thought was good, that they were then fielding the conversations of, this is garbage. They're not interested. This isn't even relevant to the time of year, but because we didn't want to work with each other. We'd been fighting within a company towards the same goal, which is kind of weird, right?
Misaligned incentives, big time.
Yeah. So me, I'm all for just, first person that I want to buddy up with in a company is the sales leader, and orienting around, like, we're not here to give you 100 crap calls a day. We're here to give you 10 good calls, and they're all going to want to talk to you. So that's how I would approach it. Most companies, they usually have some type of timeline behind it. So 60 days, if there's no marketing touch, then it's fair game for an SDR to call out, and it's SDR credit. If the SDR outreach was a quarter ago, it doesn't count anymore. Timing's too long and they come in through inbound, it's now inbound. So It's going to vary company to company, but I think that's kind of stuff that there are so many other things that you should be working on and focusing on as a company versus that if you're in that conversation, good luck. Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you do?
It's a man. What we do is we'll give them credit if they've touched the account in the last 90 days.
Yeah.
And so if the thesis there is if the SDR believes it's a good account with an opportunity, it doesn't take that much effort to throw them in a quarterly drip. Just say, hey, this is my quarterly drips that I'm going to put some thought into. You know, I believe that SDR had some amount of influence on you to put their name in, the name in their head, in your head, that, hey, this is a company I want to consider. So I think that's a win regardless. The question is like, how do you define the algorithm for who gets credit? That is a question that I don't think you should even try and do a formula there. It's like, we're a team, you know, like when you look at a soccer team, a football team, a hockey team, like who gets credit for the win?
I'm a defender in soccer, so it's always the defense. Defense wins champions, man. Championships? No, kidding. But
I'm a defenseman playing hockey, so I totally yeah. But it's a great point. Like as defensemen, you know, we think it's defense, but as the coach is like, well, no, it's the team wins the game, the team loses the game, which I think we're both in alignment that, you know, that's the real win. Sure, you're keeping score and you're counting shots on goals and this and that, but like, I don't know of any professional team whatsoever that's a player's getting comped on, you know, your number of shots on goal or your shooting percentage. I think maybe the goalies in hockey, I think I've seen one contract where they got like a bonus if they had above a certain save percentage. So
yeah.
Counterexample, maybe I shouldn't have brought up, but I think
yeah. I mean, everyone has a role and they recognize that, you know, we won't win if, you know, I don't do my thing as a defender, if the forward doesn't score, like, yeah, it's all part of the team effort.
I kind of look at, this is maybe not totally accurate and 100% correct, but I kind of think about marketing as like my intent machine as a salesperson. I was like, I don't need Bombora. I need you all. And I'm going to go look through like all the intent data because I don't want to buy the same intent data that my competitors can buy. I wanted the homegrown stuff. And so that's where in my opinion, the best, I don't know, little sources of leads have been for us has been those generated intent data, whether it's, you know, I mean, yeah, I'm not going to get into like marketing MQLs and scoring and this and this and that, but like having SDRs, to your point earlier, you know, a quality approach of looking at, you know, who is interested, who's in our T right now, and let's engage with them as opposed to like trying to, I think it's a very different motion to go and add people into that T versus to try and help people through that T. Or if you're noticing somebody's like, oh, in the middle or the lowercase T, is like, oh, let's go talk to them.
Yeah. Just this morning, I was going through a list, working with an organization. They said we have 10,000 accounts that we can sell to. That's like pretty much the universe that we'd want to get in front of. Yes, there's some other stretches and everything, but realistically, there's about 10,000. It's a very high-end product. So they understand that. They then say, you know, we also have Bombora intent data. Would love to use that audience, pipe it over, get in front of them. I'm like, cool, yeah, send me that list. 450,000 organizations are on this list. They just told me 10,000 are realistically. So even that intent data goes to show just because someone's looking in a category doesn't mean that they could just be interested. It could be a kid on a phone. It could be God knows what, but even the intent data does need to be scrubbed. It's not always exactly dead on. So to your point of, I want the people who are talking and marketing to the point of, I'm going to get in front of those 10,000 people. I can get in front of these other ones if you want. It's not going to do much for you, but we're going to be much more strategic and mindful of where we're spending our time and attention. Because again, we know what's selling because we're working with the sales team to identify those accounts versus the universe of anyone who's come to a website at some point, but may or may not even realistically be someone you'd want to talk to.
I'm curious. I know we're on the sort of we're closing in on the end of the episode. I know you got a hard stop. I want to work towards that. The last piece I wanted to kind of land on was, you know, we talked earlier about measuring quality and measuring progress it can be challenging, but measuring pipeline is the ultimate. I know you all have a unique way of thinking about pipeline, and this is kind of a teaser for Sydney's episode, because we're going to go. I literally just did the pre-interview, and we're going to go a little bit deeper on this. If this is interesting, keep your eyes out for Sydney's Sydney Waterfall. Will be coming out in probably 3-4 weeks. Talk to me about HIRO pipeline. Talk to me about how you measure the quality approach or approaches across channels, styles, etc.
Yeah. Stay tuned for that episode. She will speak to us a heck of a lot better than I will. Yeah. So HIRO, what is a HIRO? So HIRO, high intent revenue opportunity. And the way that we view this is it's how you can standardize your pipeline. A high intent revenue opportunity is an opportunity that has a 25% win rate from deals in that stage. So some organizations think you have like stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, but you can also look at it by some of the sources we spoke about earlier: inbound marketing, event, SDR. Sometimes you might find different stages orient to the different funnels. So what we like to do is figure out, okay, what is the HIRO stage for each of these channels? And then over time, you can look at, if you're taking the quality approach, you don't get to this stage really unless they're truly qualified, the sales rep has vetted them out, there is intent to buy, they have the budget, they've gone through more of the formal qualification process from the sales side. And so the only way that people are reaching this is if you're doing the right things, reaching the right people, showing, your expertise, that you can be helpful to them, delivering quality. And so that number is only going to go up if you're doing the right things within each of those channels. So we really like to look at that number in terms of both the count, how many HIROs are you creating in a given time frame. We usually like to look quarterly for meaningful business results. And then the amount of pipeline that's come associated, because if you are getting in front of the right people who are the strong fit, usually you don't have to work discounts and other little things that you have to do to push a deal through. So you should see higher contract rates on them. Usually we'll win them faster as well. So yeah, I don't want to steal a thunder from Sydney. She's going to get into all of that with you, but it's a really good way of just normalizing your data to understand what are the different sources coming in and fueling your pipeline, and then work backwards from, well, how did they, like, why are there more quality coming this way or that way? What's the approach? What's the strategy? How can we take that learning and apply it to this other source?
Love it. I know you got a hard stop. I appreciate you coming on. If people are like, man, this guy sounds awesome, I want to work for him, I want to hire him, I want to work with his company, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Yeah, LinkedIn. It's easy to find me on there, Sam Kuehnle. Companies are fine labs. Again, our team's definitely quite vocal, sharing thoughts, different things on there. So come to the website, find us on LinkedIn. We've got a couple podcasts. So yeah, just give us a search. It'll be easy enough. But this was fun. I'm looking forward to your conversation with Sydney.
Right on. Me too. And thanks so much for coming on. Everybody, we'll see you all next week.